BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the Teespring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. First, I would like to begin by saying thank you to everyone who listened to yesterday's episode on the serial killer BTK, Dennis Rader, and I'm going to be doing some future episodes on him, as well as on the stories of some of his victims. But tomorrow, I will be releasing an episode on the Zodiac Killer BTK connection, because there's this theory going around on the internet that the Zodiac Killer and BTK, standing for Bind, Torture, and Kill, Dennis Rader, were one and the same, and I would like to respond to that. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's a great time to do so. You can follow along with all of these true crime discussions. And here is a bit of BBOR trivia for you. The only episode that was ever taken down from this channel for copyright infringement was one that I recorded back in 2019 called Odd Facts About Missing Persons Cases. And I was really quite surprised that that happened, because that was one that did not have any audio recordings, it didn't have any videos, it didn't have anything that was actually taken from someone else's media creation. It was one of those black box recordings with the pink bubbles going around on it, and I actually disputed that, and now that episode is back up on Black Box Online Radio, and I was listening back to it, and I thought, I really need to smooth over some of the details in that one. And if you want to talk about odd facts about missing persons in the true crime world and some other true crime cases, I would like to begin with something that is very general, and that is that some people are abducted, and they attempt to survive the abduction by going along with the will of their captor, of the assailant. And back in 2019, I was talking about how many people were responding to some true crime videos in the comment section on YouTube, and they were saying, I wish that people would not do that. Yell, scream, kick, bite, scratch, fight the abductor, because once the abductor has someone relocated to a different area, then they will have a greater opportunity to end that person's life. And that is a point that I think needs to be reiterated, because that could contain the answers to a lot of different true crime cases where someone has simply vanished and we do not know what happened to them. But I would also like to remind everyone that these rules are not set in stone. Maybe you're even thinking of a true crime case now when the person went along with the abductor and they were able to survive. The first one that I thought of was the story of Abby Hernandez, and believe it or not, there actually is an old black box recording about her from years ago. But Abby Hernandez was abducted, and they made a movie about her recently called Girl in the Shed, The Kidnapping of Abby Hernandez, and the description says, 14-year-old Abby Hernandez vanishes while walking home from school in North Conway, New Hampshire. Held captive in a soundproof container, Abby endures psychological, sexual, and emotional abuse while keeping hope alive that the authorities will find her. And I haven't watched this movie yet, but I definitely want to. And it actually is going to feature Ben Savage from Boy Meets World, and he also did the movie Palo Alto, California. It looks like he will be playing one of the lead characters in that one, and Abby Hernandez is played by Lindsay Navarro. But if I recall from when that was a big news story, Abby Hernandez actually was able to survive by going along with the plan of the abductor, by being agreeable. And even though the movie is called Girl in the Shed, I believe she was actually held in a storage container, as the description said, a soundproof container. And she had a shock collar around her neck, and if she went through a certain distance, she was electrocuted. But she began to play into the abductor's delusion and did even what they flat out asked her about, ego stroking of all things, and then ultimately she was rescued. So the point is that people are different, and people are going to respond differently in different situations. And we were talking about some of this yesterday in the episode on BTK about the serial killer Dennis Rader, because he was someone who really surprised a lot of people watching his confession on YouTube, talking about murdering people and even torturous acts to people and just acting out sexual fantasies. And everyone is so surprised that people like that are walking among us. And what I said was that the thing that truly surprised me was not that there is somebody out there like the serial killer BTK or like Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy. No. How many names did I just list off? 4 or 5? What truly shocked me was the number of serial killers that are present in America, and I'm learning about them all the time. I do episodes about them very frequently on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, and I'm always learning about some new serial killer that operated, that would abduct people. And here's something, though, about missing persons cases and true crime, another odd fact. The abductor or the serial killer is extremely non-threatening. Last year I did an episode called Serial Killer John Aykroyd, Ghosts of Highway 20, and he abducted a woman, and she survived, but she said that he didn't seem threatening at all. He just seemed completely reassuring, and he didn't give off any type of dangerous vibe. And abductors are extremely methodical, and I believe it's somewhat connected to psychopathy or sociopathy or narcissism. For example, the serial killer Roger Kibbe, the I-5 Strangler, he also once found a mother and a daughter on the side of the road, and he drove the mother to a payphone to make a call, and she couldn't get in touch with anyone, so he drove her back, and then he picked up her daughter to give her a ride somewhere, and never came back, and he murdered her, but ultimately that led to her death. However, he had the opportunity to do something to her mother, but he didn't want to. He was just putting on that gentle, safety-like facade, and then so he could have access to the daughter. Abductors and predators can be very non-threatening, but they can also be very opportunistic. In the original recording, I was talking about how someone from El Salvador had posted a video on Facebook of an attempted abduction where there was this mother with her children in a laundromat, and then a hand just snuck in through the door. You couldn't even see the face of the person, barely even the arm, and just the hand. And that hand grabbed one of her children, and then she ran out after him, and an altercation went down, which you couldn't really see on camera, but you saw her carrying the baby back into the laundromat. Abductors are also very opportunistic, and they are going after people who are in vulnerable places, and sometimes they can be bold and daring. It's not only going to be the type of person who is just going to be calm and friendly and lure them to, well, any odd area. Sometimes they're going to be very brash, and I think that another example of a serial killer that I've learned about since 2019 was Arthur Bomar, the Stone Cold Killer, someone who would drive down the highway, and he would tap the bumper of a woman's car, get her to pull over, act like it's some type of little fender bender, and they get out to talk about insurance, and then he would use that as the opportunity to abduct and murder her, and that was his pattern. And I think he was more of an example of someone who was not like BTK, not like the Zodiac Killer, not like the Son of Sam, where he wanted to brag about these exploits. I believe that crimes like that were committed purely for sexual motivation. There's no need to taunt the press, or there's no desire to taunt the press or write letters to police officers and call 911 and make calls bragging about his crimes. Instead, he just wanted to commit torturous sexual acts because he was demented and deranged and he wanted to cause pain to other people. Absolutely horrible, horrible things that people do. And sometimes people use the word monster to talk about serial killers or mass shooters. You'll often hear them asking that question. Does society create the monster, or does the monster wreak havoc on society? But the fact of the matter is, these people are not monsters. They are mentally deranged individuals. If you've ever seen the movie Hayride, maybe you could say something to the effect of, the only monsters in the world are on two legs, thus referring to man. But, I mean, that's just like a way of dressing up the subject. The true definition should be that they are mentally deranged individuals. They are people who are operating in a destructive and dangerous way because of sometimes sexual gratification, sometimes power-fueled gratification, sometimes revenge killings, and all types of destructive behavior can be put in. And the next fact that I would like to talk about is water. And I know that sounds really weird when you say it, but these are odd facts about true crime and missing persons cases. And the point is that when somebody is disoriented around a water source, the risk of drowning becomes so much higher. And if you look at the title, not all missing persons cases are truly connected to the true crime world. Sometimes they are simply accidents. And I cannot restate this enough because people frequently die around water sources, and there are examples of how this can turn into some massive true crime theory that gets shared in all corners of the internet, like the smiley face killers theory about how there's this gang of serial killers that is operating in the underground shadows of America, going after young men, usually around the college age, attacking them while they're intoxicated and drowning them. And then you also have the Manchester Canals pusher theory. Exact same thing, except in the canals of Manchester. So I think that, firstly, the whole smiley face killer, serial killer gang theory, I do not believe that for a second. I think it's just common for people who are disoriented around water sources to pass away. But I do believe that there was a serial killer operating in Manchester, and I don't think all of the Manchester Canals deaths were murders, but I do believe that some of them are. And it's been a long time since I've done that episode, so I can't elaborate on the specifics too much, but that was my conclusion. But, like, sometimes the answer, though, really is quite simple, because the world was taken by storm with the story of Elisa Lam, the woman who was acting very bizarrely on a hotel security camera, and then she was found dead on top of the Cecil Hotel in a water tank, nonetheless. So that could just very well be the solution. She was a woman who was struggling with bipolar disorder. She had fallen off her meds, and that she entered the water tank voluntarily. There were numerous ways of getting to the roof of the Cecil Hotel, whether it was through the emergency exit door, which did not have a functioning alarm, or it could have been through the fire escape ladders that also went up to the roof, and other people who visited the Cecil Hotel, which has since been renamed the Stay on Main, have said that there are these hatches that lead straight up to the roof, and it was also very common for the hotels to keep the water tanks unlocked. Other investigators went up and found not only were the lids unlocked, but also they were opened, and that's more of the open one. They started adding locks to those things later on, and I even talked about this once on the channel about one time I was staying in a hotel, and we went on the roof because they had this little doorway that went out there, and I saw the water tank, and I told the guys I was staying with, hey, wait a second, I'll be back. And I just went and climbed up the ladder and just looked into the water tank on top of the hotel, and it was open. No lid, no covering, absolutely not. I personally believe that Elisa Lam entered the tank voluntarily, and she was found naked without her clothes on, which she most likely removed herself because of hypothermia. For some reason, maybe just as a result of her manic episode, she entered the tank voluntarily, and the water level was too low from the surface, so she couldn't reach the hatch, if you want to call it that, or the lid, the surface of the container, and then she was just trapped down there. She began to experience hypothermia, and then ultimately she passed away. But when someone is disoriented around a water source, just that can be the answer to so many missing persons cases or true crime cases. And a very famous one that was discussed online for quite a while was the death of Kaylin Lauder from Utah, who was found dead in the Jordan River. And the difference between the Kaylin Lauder story and the Elisa Lam story is not only did we have this video of Kaylin Lauder where she was standing outside appearing to have a conversation with her dog, or she is saying something to her dog, but there were also audio recordings of her phone calls, actually, where again it appears that she was a woman who was struggling with some type of mental health issue, and she was disoriented near a water source. She was not aware of what was going on. And I think that ties in very closely to the next point. When people are angry, they can also go missing. And I know that might sound something that is what odd. Well, that's the title of this video. So many times I've been online and I pull up a video about a true crime case, and that's the story. That two people got into an argument, and one of them went off to cool down. They went for a walk, and they never came back. But I do have a challenge question for you guys, because as many of you will know, I'm a big fan of the Lord Nart's channel, and he recently released an episode on the disappearance of Alex Enslen, Enslen, again on the Lord Nart's channel, hosted by John Lorden. And the challenge question is, have you ever experienced this, where you've been walking with somebody, just walking down the street, maybe the sidewalk or a dirt path, and that person just took off running without any previously stated explanation? Has that ever happened to you? That has definitely happened to me, but that was brought up in the disappearance of Alex Enslen video. That happened to me once when I was a teenager, and I was with two coworkers. One of them was actually someone who is a former friend. I knew him before the job. We got the job together, and there was another coworker with us, and we were on a night off, so we were at the mall before the wonderful malls of America all began to close down. That mall no longer exists. It was demolished. But we were walking outside on the sidewalk right near the mall, and the friend that I had just took off running. He just started running, and he ran around the corner, and we looked for him for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then we thought, well, okay, guess he went somewhere else. And we met up with him again later that night, and we said, hey, where'd you go? And he's like, I was looking for you. And I said, what are you talking about? We were 5 feet behind you, and you took off running. And then he just said, oh, I needed to be alone. Has that ever happened to you? Something like that, where someone just starts running away for an unexplained reason. I find it suspicious, but not super suspicious. And I don't want to downplay this concept of how someone can be very angry and then they go off on their own for a while, whether it's walking or driving, or they're just trying to go someplace where the argument is not present so they can cool down and they don't come back. Because I think that leads to disorientation in its own right. Imagine someone who is very angry. They're getting lost in their imagination. They're talking to themselves over and over again. Oh my goodness, I can't believe he or she said that to me again. We're always getting into the same fight about the same thing. And they aren't completely aware of their surroundings. And they aren't completely paying attention to what's going on around them. And back when I was 15 years old and I was getting my learner's permit, or preparing for my learner's permit, and had to do the written test and then the road test when I was 16, my mother was actually reading the driver's ed manual along with me, and she said, oh, hey, look here, it says you're not supposed to drive if you're angry or upset. And I didn't want to listen to that. I didn't want to hear that. But it turned out, like most of the time, Mom was right. Because, just for that very reason, you're not going to be completely aware of everything that's going on. And when doing something like driving a car, that can lead to accidents. Or if somebody is going to even be walking, they could be involved in another accident. As far as the concept of car accidents go, that also leads to a lot of other missing persons cases. There was this channel out there, I think it was called True Creepy Stories. It was hosted by a guy named Ranil, and he even asked the question once, saying that what is going on with people who go missing after they crash their car? Like, why is this happening? And I think we can answer that question now because I can begin with the disappearance of Maura Murray from New Hampshire back in 2004. She was, of course, a student at UMass Boston, but she went missing around Haverhill, New Hampshire, after crashing her car on February 9th of that year. And it's possible that she didn't actually crash the car, but it just made a very rough stop into a snowbank, and she almost certainly did not hit a tree. This is the next fact. When someone gets into an auto accident and they leave their vehicle, the risk of dying is so much higher. And to share some personal experience, again, I don't think it's as simple as, say, for example, in 2018, I was at the park, and it turned out I left my lights on in the car. By the time I got back to the car, the battery was dead. So I just walked home, which was well over a mile, but I walked back to my house, and someone else was home, and they gave me a ride with the jumper cables, and we jump-started the car, and I was able to drive it home. Nothing bad happened, right? Because that was familiar territory. When someone has auto trouble in unfamiliar territory, and they think, oh, well, I'm just going to cut across the forest and try to get to the next town, that's when the trouble happens. That's when the dangerous activity happens. And it doesn't even have to be a car crash. For example, the disappearance of Brandon Lawson from 2013. Brandon Lawson's truck ran out of gas while he was driving from San Angelo, Texas, toward Abilene, Texas, and he made a very bizarre 911 call, and people couldn't understand what he was saying, and for the longest time, some people think that he was murdered by state troopers, but Brandon Lawson's remains were almost certainly found in 2022. Perhaps the biggest true crime discovery of this current year. The only one that I think would rival that is the revelation that the Sherry Papini story from 2016 may have been a hoax. She was the woman who said that 2 Latina women abducted her and that she was held captive for 22 days and she was branded and beaten and they were going to sell her into sexual slavery. But because of the media coverage surrounding her disappearance, they released her in a very odd way. But that one was almost certainly a hoax. And that could even be a new point on the list. Sometimes people don't always tell the truth. Sometimes people misrepresent things, or sometimes people genuinely don't understand what the truth is. Because to go back to the disappearance of Brandon Lawson for a second, he was almost certainly high on drugs when he went missing. His own brother has corroborated that story, and I don't fault Brandon at all for that. We are only human, and ultimately he ended up passing away because of this, but that led to his disappearance, and then whatever was going on with him at the time, I don't believe that he deserved to die that way. It is a tragedy, and, rest in peace to him and all the other people that I've been talking about in this episode here. But with the disappearance of Maura Murray, it's a little bit more complicated because she was definitely in unfamiliar territory at night. Even if she had some mild familiarity with the state of New Hampshire, she had visited Bartlett, New Hampshire a lot, and she was very into reading on the White Mountains. She had a book in her car called Not Without Peril that was about them. People simply aren't sure what happened to Maura. Her remains have not been found. all kinds of theories out there. Some people think that it was an opportunistic abduction. Other people think that she ran away to start a new life. And there are other people that think that she was doing more of what I was talking about earlier, about trying to take some type of shortcut into the woods, and that she would have tripped over some type of object, maybe broken her ankle, and then because it was the wintertime, February, she may have passed away, succumbed to the elements. It really is a mystery. But to recap the points, the odd facts about missing persons cases and true crime events, it is of the utmost importance to remember that fighting back at the attacker can also save your life, but it's also important to remember that people are different. It's also valuable to know that abductors come in all shapes and sizes. They can be extremely non-threatening. They can also be very brash and uncalculated, and definitely self-serving. So I think the moral of that story is trust no one. And I know that some people aren't going to hear that. And some people might even think that that is pessimistic. It is not. Make no mistake. I am an optimist. But with optimism, you have to remember that we can still be deceived. It doesn't mean that everybody is pure evil. No, absolutely not. Instead, it just means that sometimes you can't always tell if someone is harmful at face value. I mean, have you ever heard the expression, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, people are a lot more complicated than books, and you can always keep your guard up to a certain extent. And the next one is that if someone is disoriented around a water source, the risk of dying and drowning is so much higher. And then the final one was that if someone has broken down with their vehicle or had some type of auto accident, if they leave the scene of their vehicle where their vehicle has broken down, the risk of dying is so much higher. And believe it or not, I think just going through this episode here, I think we've probably had a lot of food for thought in many true crime cases. If you think any of these points are relevant to a particular true crime case, you can put your idea in the comment section down below. You can talk about the disappearance, the missing persons case, or maybe another true crime event, or even if you want to talk about some of the victims of a serial killer, please put your ideas in the comment section down below about these true crime cases. But there was a challenge question that I heard on a different YouTube channel earlier this morning. And I don't mean to get all spiritual and religious or anything like that, but the challenge question was, do you believe that any part of human nature is good? And everyone who was discussing this was like, nope, absolutely not. There is nothing in human nature that is good. And I will try to answer this one, and you can respond to this challenge question as well. Do you believe that any part of human nature is good? My response is very simple, that yes, I do think that some parts of human nature are good because we have these things called personality traits. Not everyone has the same personality traits. In fact, all of us have different personality traits. My personality may be similar to yours, but we're not going to be the same as everybody else, right? So I believe that certain personalities may be more inclined to experience moral and ethical behavior. And yes, absolutely, I believe in good and bad. I believe in right and wrong. Like when we're talking about these serial killers, no matter what, they're wrong. Opportunistic predators, they're wrong. That hand just reaching in the laundromat and abducting someone's child, I'd say that's bad, and I'm not alone in that. I believe that that is a bad thing. So I believe that some personality types are more inclined to exhibit moral and ethical behavior, and certain personality types are more inclined to be the opposite, immoral and unethical behavior. But if you would like to respond to that, you can weigh in the comment section down below. I would love to read your messages. Share anything you want about missing persons cases, true crime events. And please feel free to contact the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. If you have anything that is extended that you would like to share with me, you can also get my personal Facebook, which is in the description box, as well as the Facebook for the show, Black Box Online Radio, is the name of the Facebook page, and of course there is always the Instagram page, BlackBoxNid88, and I will see you over there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.